Okay, my friends, yesterday I talked about how the Russians lost a plane, but it wasn't Ukraine that shot it down. And I said, okay, faulty parts or whatever, it's still one airframe off the battlefield. That's good. Today I need to revise that because what actually happened was that a Russian Su-25 that was reported to just have crashed. It was actually shot down by friendly fire. The Russians actually shot their own plane down, and that's what actually transpired here. So that's why we're starting there. Now, if you don't want to count that, there was another Russian jet that was down in Mali. It just crashed, and maybe we'll find out that it was the same thing. I don't know. I think this was just a crash, but that was today. So there's also this. Ukrainian pilots are increasingly turning the impossible into the possible with deep strikes on. Now, there's a mixed review whether this was Kursk or Zaporizhia, but it was supposed to be a weapons or arms depot or something along those lines. And then we see Ukrainian drones struck 2 plants overnight. This was like a big pre-planned strike, one serving as the initial link to explosives production chain, the other connected to oil refinery and tech. So that was good, what was going on there. Iris-T air defense breaks Ukraine's unit's record in debut air defense operation protecting Lviv. Armed with German-made Iris-T. Those things are no joke, by the way, the Iris-T. For the first time, unit intercepted 7 Russian missiles in one battle, outperforming its past best of 5 with the S-300. Okay, so a little bit more here. Operators of the 14th Regular Army of the Unmanned Systems Forces attacked the production facilities of the Novokubayevsk petrochemical company in Russia's Samara region, leading manufacturer of explosive components. This is one of those 2 that I was talking about. Explosions were heard near the local thermal power plant, and this is just showing you what was going on, where it was, where the plant was. It's a chemical plant used for explosives kind of things, and so that was a good hit. Okay, overnight, 1,130. This brings us up to 1,02,690 Russian casualties. I mean, every time I talk over 1 million, it just feels like weird. Like you cross this psychological line or psychological threshold, but I don't think it's a psychological threshold for Putin. He's just going to keep coming. 3 tanks, 7 armored fighting vehicles, 52 artillery systems, 107 vehicles and fuel tanks. So this is all about what we have seen recently, these numbers here. Now, Ukrainian defense forces have destroyed 1,262 Russian tanks and 2,748 armored vehicles in the first half of 2025 alone. That's from January to June, well, today's June 14th of this year. The first 6 months isn't even over. That's pretty significant number. And these numbers aren't really high with the tanks and armored fighting vehicles, right? We've seen a lot higher at other times or other stages during the war. Ukraine is deconstructing Russia's drone factories with fire and steel. So Ukraine's very clever about this. They are going after the drone factories and the component part makers, or going after the rockets and going after the explosives components, like you just saw in these other videos or these other articles that I was showing you. Russia is building over 4,000 drones a month. Ukraine is blowing up factories behind it. So you're looking at about 133 they can put out a day. Now that is what makes me nervous at this point when I only see 58 Shahed drones Russia launched last night. 43 of them were neutralized, and that's good. But it was about the same number, about 60-ish for the last 2 or 3 days, and that makes me think that they're saving up for a big blitz. Okay, ever new Russian shelling of Kharkiv results in thousands of broken windows and damage, said Kharkiv's mayor, Igor Teretkov. Currently, the need for windows exceeds 50,000. The record was more than 5,000 broken windows in one attack. Just think about what that's like for the population living there. And then, weather destroys things beyond whatever was already destroyed. And yeah. Okay. In the cross direction, Ukrainian defenders repelled 42 assaults. Again, we look at Pokrovsk because this is the high water mark on the battlefield. This line is just inching closer to Pokrovsk regularly. But again, I thought it was going to fall back in August, so I'm not going to try to anticipate what's going to happen here. The Ukrainian defenders have been just amazing. Okay, just other news, and then we'll look a little bit at the connection between what was going on in Israel and Ukraine. Bernard Henry Levy, I'm not sure that all American parents know what's happening to stolen Ukrainian kids. When Russian forces enter a village, they kidnap the children, take them to Russia, change their names, and brainwash them. A fair peace absolutely requires their return. I couldn't agree more. Like, this should be thing number one when we're talking about negotiating. Before we even talk about any ceasefire, we should be talking about, like, you got to return the stolen kids, because this isn't okay. Okay, just some images of mass production of anti-Shahed drones by the Wild Hornets. They're producing these like by the bushelful. Like, it's just amazing. Czechia plans to supply Ukraine with even more ammunition in 2025. Good on them for the Czech artillery initiative last year. Said Czech Foreign Minister Jan Lipavsky, we want to supply more large caliber ammunition this year than in 2024 and continue the initiative in 2026. So good on them. I mean, that's pretty awesome. Ukraine's new domestically produced Sapsan ballistic missile. It's out. It's complete. They've tested it. Everything's working. They're starting mass production of it. It completed successful tests, headed for mass production. During recent tests, the missile reached velocity of 5.2 Mach, approximately. That's faster than the American ATACMS. So when this is up and running, it's going to be pretty awesome. Okay, there was a poll out yesterday. Most Americans, including Republicans, think that Putin is playing games with the U.S. and they want Trump to arm Ukraine and sanction Russia, according to a Harvard CAPS poll. Most voters also believe that Trump hasn't been tough enough on Putin, but they're split on how they're handling tasks. But even a majority of Republicans, which are the weakest group when you look between Democrats, Independents, and Republicans, even a majority of Republicans say, yeah, keep arming Ukraine. Like that was the headline of that poll. Okay. It was only a simple majority, like 54% or something like that, but it was still a majority of even Republicans, which was the weakest group. Okay, Trump has quietly approved another 30 million arms shipment to Ukraine. Didn't hear anything about that, but yeah, apparently that has happened. Ukraine has Sea Baby autonomous combat drones. We know about those. One of them shot down a helicopter. Well, one of these involved in an attack on Russian ships survived combat with the Russian Air Force, traveling over 4,000 kilometers in the Black Sea. It's now on display in Kyiv. It made it all the way over there, had a combat engagement, and is now back, and it's on display. That's pretty awesome. Okay, now let me pivot to talk about Israel and the connection between Israel and Russia and connection between Israel and Ukraine, because these are tied together. If I do just a video about what's gone on between Israel hitting Iran hitting Tel Aviv like it did last night, if I do something like that, it'll be its own standalone. But here I want to make the connections. So it seems the chain of Iran's top military command has been destroyed. Within 12 hours, Israel eliminated all of its leaders. Look at this, like gone. Okay, but I want to highlight this guy here because he has a connection to Ukraine. So a general in Iran who supplied Putin with Shahed drones, like that's bad thing number one. He also downed a Ukrainian plane in 2020. That's connection number two. He's been eliminated. A Boeing 737 of Ukraine's international airlines crashed near Tehran. All 176 people on board were killed in the disaster. At first, this particular general convinced the international community that the plane had crashed due to technical reasons, but later admitted the responsibility of the Revolutionary Guard for the crash. By the way, I said IRGC. I said Republican Guard, I think, yesterday. Correcting myself, it was Revolutionary Guard. just a little slip. Republican Guard, I think, was like Iraq. Isn't that the case? The defense system mistakenly identified the plane as a missile, and so he shot it down. And he also was the guy behind providing Shaheds to Russia. So he's a bad guy, and he's no longer with us. The number one takeaway of the D plus 24 hours is that most observers severely underestimated Israelis' Air Force capacity to conduct large-scale air campaign against Iran. Even with limited tanker support, Israel's repeatedly putting together strike packages with dozens of aircrafts. Okay, but how would they do that? Because Israel's a long way away from Iran. Like, they have to travel a great distance in order to get there. Well, the solutions appear to have been relying on fourth-generation aircraft like the F-16 and F-15, carrying relatively light payloads and a massive amount of fuel. So that's how they pulled that off. Okay, Russian officials largely condemned. Now, here's the connection between Iran and Israel and Russia. Russian officials largely condemned the June 13th Israeli strikes against Iran. Russian President Vladimir Putin continued to offer to facilitate negotiations on Iran's nuclear program. I mean, it's like the fox guarding the hen house. Okay, so you're going to work with Putin. And Trump was wanting to do this, to work with Putin to guarantee a deal with Iran. Like, you can trust, who do you trust less in that equation? Now, Putin called the president of Iran and expressed his condolences after Israel strikes. So, yeah, they're a little chummy. And it's reported that Putin also had separate phone calls with Benjamin Netanyahu after that. And then Putin emphasized that Russia condemns Israel's actions. All right. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu went on air and said, Israel's with you, to the people of Iran, saying, we're making it possible for you to be able to rise up and remove your leadership. And I doubt anything will happen with that. But the world holds its breath after an Israeli strike on Iran, and Kyiv braces for the worst as Washington's priorities may shift. This is the dangerous thing to my mind, as if this goes on, then Washington's attention goes away. It's just like if something cooks off in Taiwan and China, Washington's attention will go there instead of being on Ukraine. Analysts warn that the tensions could prompt the U.S. to divert its resources from the war in Ukraine to the Middle East. That happened after October 7th, and it could happen again. And finally, we'll leave you with this. This is Darth Putin reacting to Rylan Givens. I don't know that that's his actual name. Isn't that the name of the guy from what's that cop show set in Kentucky? I can't remember. I can hear the song in my head. Anyway, initial reports that American, British, and even French strike aircraft have entered Middle Eastern airspace to help with shooting down Iranian missiles if or when they launch. And Ukrainians are looking at that like, what? Why are you helping here, but you weren't? Yeah, it's very frustrating to watch, my friends. All right, that's all that I have. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for putting up with the weird acoustics. I'm clearly not in my normal home office, but thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.